Hey YouTube, what's up? My name is David. Today I'm going to be dropping my color grading secrets for you here today. All the advice, all the tips, all the recommendations, how to set it up, and kind of the situations where you might need to color grade. So we're going to be handling 3 different situations. A sit down and talk video, a video where the light is very harsh, like golden hour straight into the camera lens lighting, and then a regular lighting situation where it's just normal, very clean, very good, kind of cloudy looking kind of. So those are going to be the 3 scenarios we're going to be color grading to today, and I'm going to be giving you guys all the tips that I possibly can. Keep in mind that I'm going to be using Premiere Pro for this video. I'm not going to be using Final Cut. I'm not going to be using DaVinci Resolve. There's a lot of programs for color grading, but today I'm going to be using Premiere Pro. So if you're interested in getting into Premiere Pro, already use it and don't know how to color grade, or are interested in switching up programs, I think Premiere Pro is one of the very good ones, but the color grading can get a little confusing, but it gets really easy once you kind of get the gist of things. So this video is for you guys who are interested in using Premiere Pro. So first things first, the camera quality is super important. It really depends on what your camera offers. It's not like the most important thing, but if you want more control of your color, the bitrate, the resolution, that is going to be super important for you. Because if you say shot on a red RAW, like a red camera, which is $40,000, it's not the price that is going to give you that quality. It's the bitrate that it gives. It offers red RAW. So pretty much when it comes to the bitrate, the red RAW and all of that, it's pretty much the detail. So let's say I took a picture of this microphone and I shot it on red RAW. You could literally see all the little like dots on this if you wanted to, if you zoomed in, because it keeps all the detail of the video, everything that you shot, and a lot of cameras don't do that because it would take so much space. So it really compresses that video. So there's 2 modes, IPB and All-I on most cameras. So All-I is going to give you more detail, but just not, there's still some compression, but it's going to give you a lot more detail, as opposed to IPB, which pretty much compresses it in camera and blends things together. So you basically lose a lot of quality and you lose a lot of control when you shoot an IPB. So if you aren't already, I suggest shooting in All-I, which is the best mode you can shoot in on most DSLR cameras, unless you have some RAW, motion JPEG, or whatever else. Those are gonna give you the most quality. So 10-bit is usually what people shoot at for the best color grading. 10-bit 422 is what they call it in the film world. It's gonna give you a lot of control for color, and you can do specific things like pick out the blues, like this very specific hue of blue, take that and pull it out of the entire video. I'll explain it later when we go through HSL secondary, because that's kind of the idea of HSL secondary. So we're gonna talk about it more when we get to that point in the video. So let's talk about 4 things that I recommend when shooting so that you can color grade more comfortably. 1, especially if you're doing the sit down and talk video, is your white balance. You want to set your white balance if you're doing a sit down and talk video, especially if you have a window open like I do, because the white balance is constantly going to shift. If it's on auto white balance, it's going to constantly shift back and forth, and you're going to get a weird lighting situation. So when you're color grading, your colors are going to constantly change for some reason. I was shooting like that for 1.5 years before I realized, why don't I just change my white balance? So after I changed my white balance, my videos got a lot better. There was no shift in colors over the periods of time in the video, especially if your video is like 12 minutes long. You're gonna get a constant change. It's gonna fluctuate, and it's gonna be super annoying to look at when you're editing it. And it's probably gonna be annoying for the viewers when they're viewing it. So change your white balance, set it to something stationary, something still, not auto, and it's gonna help out so much more when you're coloring. 2 is a flat profile. Now, a flat profile is a log profile or anything. It's gonna make your video look kind of washed out. This is what a flat profile is gonna look like compared to what I colored it to be. So this is gonna give you more detail in the shadows, so the shadows are the blacks, all of the darker areas in your video. It's gonna give you more detail there so that you can maintain it, have more control of your coloring, and more control of anything overall. So this is literally made for color grading, and people do this in the film world all the time. It's gonna look super ugly in camera, but it's gonna make for a lot easier coloring when it comes to the details and all of that in the video. So flat profile is something you definitely want to do. A lot of people don't know this, especially in the vlog world. A lot of them don't care, but if you want to make your videos look a lot more cinematic, a flat profile is definitely going to help. 3 is good lighting. Now, it may be hard if you're shooting in natural light, but if you're doing a sit down and talk video or have a small light you can bring around with you, lighting is going to be everything, because 1, it's going to reduce noise for your video. It's going to give you things to focus on. And overall, you're gonna be able to color a lot more. And I honestly like the editing with a definite light source, because you get to do so much more in the shadows. You can make the shadows a lot more blue and then still have whatever's like highlighted with the light in the spotlight like a completely different color, because it's not in the shadows, because it's directly in the light. It has a main focus, it has a lot of stuff on it, and you can just go from there and it looks awesome. So lighting is definitely something you want to see if you can do, because it's always going to make your video so much better. The last thing I recommend when shooting is an interesting background. Now this kind of applies to just the sit down and talk videos, but it could honestly go for the B-roll and all of the cinematic shots as well. I say have an interesting background by the colors. The colors of the background are going to like completely change the video vibe. It's gonna give you a lot more color. It's gonna give you something more interesting in the background. So what I do when I sit down and talk is I turn on this light that I have here, this LED light from LifeX that I can change the color. So I usually make it like a blue, sometimes a green, and I just change the color up a little bit, and just it adds more to editing in the background, and everything in the background just gets illuminated blue, and it looks so good. So now that I'm done with all those recommendations, it's been like 5 minutes. I'm gonna give you guys what you guys came here for. Let's just get started color grading. So I have 3 scenarios here. We're gonna start off with the sit down and talk video, because the sit down and talk video is gonna be a lot of the stuff that a lot of us do, especially when we're vlogging, doing like get readies with me and whatnot. So we're gonna go to Premiere Pro and we're gonna go to the Lumetri Color tab, which is going to be the central area for color grading in Premiere Pro. I like to start off in the creative tab. So the creative tab is where I apply my LUT. So let's go to the look, and we're gonna use one of mine. We're gonna use the teal and orange. And as you can see, this looks disgusting. This looks really disgusting right now, but that's because the intensity is on 100. So you want to tone that down. I usually tone it down to about 20 to 30, somewhere around that area. Now let's see what it looks like without the LUT in general. So you can see that it gives it like a very slight blue teal kind of look. So that's cool, right? I like that. A lot of people try to avoid it, but I just throw on like 20 sharpening just to add in that, a little bit sharper effect, clearly. Honestly, we play around with it. I like to throw vibrance and all that on top. And then I skip these shadows and highlight tints for right now, and I head straight to my curves. My curves are something that I really like to mess with lately. So I'm gonna do exactly what I do with my photography. I'm gonna pull the curves down here where the highlights and the whites are, so and make these a little bit brighter. And then I'm gonna bring the blacks and the shadows down a little bit so that I can get that very contrasty kind of cinematic look. Now, honestly, I think that it looks a little bit too blue, so we're gonna go back to the creative tab, and we're gonna play with the shadow tints and the highlight tints. So the shadow tints are gonna control the shadows, everything that's darker in the footage. So if I want the shadows to look more orange, I'm going to give them a more orange look, and I kind of like that. Awesome. It's like pretty cool. And then in the highlights, it works the same way except for the brighter parts of the video. I think that looks cool. A little bit warmer, and it looks great. So then from there, I like to go up to the basic corrections, and I like to do my basic minor adjustments. These are pretty much up to you. You can do the highlights, the shadows, and let me just break down for you guys. So the exposure is gonna do the overall brightness and darkness of the video in both the highlights, the shadows, the whites, and the blacks. And the contrast is gonna be that difference between the whites and the blacks. So let's say whites right here, blacks right here. This is heavy contrast. There is no difference in between. As you lower the contrast, they separate, and it's gonna create so many different grays and colors in between the blacks and the whites, and it's gonna just kind of make it more faded kind of. So this is what it's gonna look like if you have low contrast, and if you have heavy contrast, the blacks and the whites have no difference between them. If you look right here, you can see that the white jumps straight into the black. So that's heavy contrast. But honestly, I don't mess with contrast. As far as temperature goes, I like to just do auto. I'll take it, throw it on top, and you get auto white balance. And from there, you can mess with it and play with however you like. Let's just change it and put it right there. I think that looks good. You also have the color wheels. The color wheels are pretty much the same thing that the creative tab was here when you have the shadow tint and the highlight tint. So pretty much what you're gonna do is control the specific shadows if you wanna make them a specific color, control the midtones, which is everything in between the shadows and the highlights, and the highlights are, just the brighter parts of the video. So let's say we wanted to use these. I'd throw them in, pick some colors. What do I wanna do? I'm very picky with my colors, so. But anyways, also anything in Premiere Pro, if you just double click on it, it'll reset and bring it back to normal. So if you mess up too much, you don't have to drag it by yourself. So now we're down to HSL secondary. So HSL secondary is going to be what I told you about when you can mess with specific colors. So let's pick colors. So let's say I wanted to take out my skin color, because that's going to be most obvious for you guys. So I'm going to pull out my skin color. Let's take a few points of skin. So pretty much I'm using this eyedropper tool to detect the color of my skin. And we're gonna go here. I can literally make it purple. I can make it green. I can look like the Hulk. I can make it red, orange, whatever I want to do. I can make it very, very different. I can make it special. I can take out the whole saturation. That's HSL secondary. You can control that. And the higher quality, the more bit rate you have in your video, the more you can control, the easier it is, and the more, you know, like specific it's going to be. Because as you can see, if you look here in the corner of the video, in both corners actually, you can see that there's some purple there now because the whole table's orange. The wall has some orange parts to it in the shadows. Once you get more detail in your camera, the more bitrate you have, the more control you're gonna have over this, and it's gonna look more sharp, more better, and it's gonna be like just easier to do, you know? So let's put this all back. Yeah, let me not. So honestly, I think this color grading looks good. Let's compare to what it looked like first. This is the beginning footage before color grading, and this is the footage afterwards. I think it looks amazing. I think it looks really good, super clean, very subtle, and a huge difference from what it was before. So I think that looks good. Now we're gonna do the same thing with the footage right here. So this is gonna be a lot more blown out. So the blown out footage is gonna be a little bit tougher, and when it comes to cinematics, it really comes down to you. It really depends on what mood you want to do, because there's different moods of videos. You can color them to fit like a specific mood. Like the warmer color is going to be more intense. They're going to be more action packed. They're going to be more like jittery and very in your face. It's going to pop more. The blue, the cool tones, those are going to be more of the emotional ones. They're going to be calmer. They're going to be sadder. They're going to be more relaxed or more ominous. So you want to really play around with it and see what works for you. So honestly, my advice to you when color grading is to just mess around with the colors, because the colors, you have complete control of how you want your video to look. Honestly, I say keep it very subtle unless it's a very intense scene. I also want to show this right here. So this is the hue saturation curve. So when you go to your curves itself, you can target specific colors. So this video is all yellow. I'm going to go in and take out all the yellows, and you're left with the oranges and the reds, the red oranges. Now, if I want to take those out, I can make specific points where I want to take specific colors out. So that is something that is very useful, especially in these videos right here. So let's say I wanted to take all the yellows out of this color. I'll take all the yellows out of this footage, and you can see, if you look at the wall in the background, like here, and the table even, let's take those yellows out, and you can see that it's white. It adds for a super clean look, and I might even just leave that because that looks really good. And as you can, and there's some green in the lamp here. I don't want that. So let's just take out this whole section, and you can see that we just got a really, really clean video. So we got the blues, the very orange parts, and the kind of pink parts. So from there, I think we got a very good color graded video. Anyways, back to the very blown out parts. These you're gonna want to kind of give it a little more contrast if you really want that, because if you give it too much highlight, it's gonna be very blown out. You're not gonna be able to see much. So when it comes to very blown out, straight in the golden hour shots, it's honestly up to you. Like I can't tell you how you want to color grade your footage. I can only give you advice. But honestly, I say keep it very contrasty, keep it epic, keep it cinematic and very in your face kind of. Now this one, the hue curve is going to change the color of that specific orange, so the specific colors. So the hues, if you don't know what hues are, it's kind of like shades. So I want to change the shade of my orange, and I can make it so many different things. And I want to keep it like a warmer orangey pink kind of orange, because golden hour is gold and I don't want it to look too yellow, you know? So, well, I guess gold is yellow. But then aside from the hue, you also have the luminance. So the luminance is going to be the brightness of that specific color. I can make the oranges super bright, or I can make them super dark, or I could just leave them normal like they should be. Okay, and I believe that is all. And the luma saturation is, yeah. Don't worry about that. You also have vignetting. If you don't know what vignetting is, it's going to be the darkness across the four corners. So you can see is the vignetting, yeah, but I don't really touch that at all. That's not really something that I play with. So yeah, if you don't really feel like touching the vignetting, don't touch the vignetting. I don't touch the vignetting. But let's see what the footage looked like before color grading. Super flat, very colorless, and then you throw it on and it looks very warm and very cool. It's very simple to color grade. It's all up to you, really. It's all about the mood that you want and whatnot. So let's finish it off with this right here. So again, let's run through all the steps that I took. First, I started with the LUT. So I applied a LUT, and then I'm decreasing the intensity so it looks a little bit more natural. From there, I'm going to add some sharpening, increase my vibrance, and then maybe some of the saturation even. Now I can throw in some split toning, some shadow tints and whatnot, which I will do because this is a very well lit video. I don't like to mess with the highlights actually, so I'm just gonna leave a shadow tint and leave the highlights alone. From there, I'm gonna move down to my curves, and we're gonna do a little bit more of the faded look. I'm gonna bring up my highlights and whites so that we get this soft looking effect across her face. And then we're gonna bring down for a little bit more contrast so we can get those darker areas a little bit more defined and show off that very crisp look. From there, I don't really like these greens over here in the leaves and the green in the house here. So we're gonna take the yellows and the greens from here and we're gonna tone them down a little bit. And we're gonna grab it from the green more and tone that down, and then a little bit more in the yellow. And as you can see, we got a lot more grayed out here. So let's look at it without and then pull it back in. You can see that it gets a little bit more colorless, and you can see that hair turns a little bit more white, but honestly I think that looks super creamy, super crispy. So let's change the hues of the oranges a little bit and see what that looks like, because I want to see what her skin could look like if we wanted to change it. And I think it looks fine where it is, actually a little bit slightly up, so I think it looks good. Now we're gonna go back to the basic corrections and just play around with these settings, the highlights, the shadows, the very basic settings. So we're gonna bring the highlights up, throw the shadows down a little bit so it gets some more detail in there. And keep in mind that when you're color grading, the lighting is gonna give you a lot of detail. So if you have very contrasty look, it's gonna make it seem a little bit more sharp, and you're gonna get a little bit more detail in there. It's only gonna make it seem like that. I have a whole video on how to make your photos look sharper, and it kind of applies the same way with video. So the higher difference in contrast, the more sharp it's going to look. It's not going to be sharper, but it's gonna appear sharper because the blacks and the whites are so different from each other, and you're not gonna get that too faded look. But aside from that, I'm gonna mess with the temperatures because she does look a little bit too orange. So let's tone this down to make it a little bit cooler. I think that it looks good. I don't think we have to remove any specific colors. I don't really like using HSL secondary. What I do is I go into those curves and I mess with the saturations of the colors, because when I go through the curves themselves, it makes it a lot easier than going through HSL secondary. HSL secondary is actually very confusing and it's kind of hard to work with, but I like just using the curves and using the saturation curves and whatnot because it makes it so much easier for me. So aside from that, I think that this is good. Let's look at this footage without the color grading. This is a super flat profile, uncolored, and this is the final color graded look. That looks amazing. I love that one. Super long video. That is all for today's video though. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope this helped you guys out, because a lot of people are very curious as to how to color grade, what the color grading is, like very specific things. So if you guys are looking for LUTs, if you guys are interested in getting started in the coloring, I actually sell my own LUT pack. I believe that it is $3. It's a very simple LUT pack. It has 5 basic presets, a black and white preset, one that works against the sun, one for, you know, everything that I do, which is my teal and oranges, and then a few other ones. But if you guys are interested in purchasing that, I will link it in the description below. I think that it's a good pack to get started with and gets you a lot of practice. And I also put in something to help you import that to Premiere Pro. I think I gave you a video in there to kind of get that together. But yeah, so that is all for today's video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button if you aren't already subscribed, and give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks so much. Have an amazing day, morning, night, and wherever you're watching from, and I'll see you then. Peace.